You are listening to Nerd Best Friends, a podcast that covers the nerdy conversations you're already having, or wish you could. It's the nerdiest thing you'll do this week.
Welcome back to another episode of Nerd Best Friends. I am Annalise, and I'm here with my best friend, Rob.
Hey, it's me, Rob, your best friend, your super nerd, and your podcast host.
Discover Nerd Best Friends across all popular podcasting platforms. Your support means the world to us, so be sure to click subscribe or follow on all your devices. If you're looking to take your support to the next level, consider joining us on Patreon or supporting us through a one-time donation on Venmo. This is episode 51, and in this episode, we are diving into the world of video games. But first, what I like about it.
How you doing, Annalise?
Peachy Keen, Jelly Bean, how are you?
I am locked in a glass box of emotion. This episode, we're going to talk about escape rooms. I love escape rooms.
Escape rooms. Okay. All right.
Because here's what I think about escape rooms as I'm kind of grokking, like, what's cool about escape rooms that's not cool about other things. And the idea is you get your LARP, right? Your live action role play where you play D&D, but instead of like pen and paper sitting around eating pretzels and drinking beer, you're out of the park wearing like homemade Renaissance costumes and foam weapons and yelling fireball, fireball, and running around trying to hit people, right? Which is fine for some people. That's great, but it's not for me. I don't want to do that in public with my body. But an escape room is like a completely socially acceptable place where you could go in and be in this locked room mystery and you're doing the Dungeons and Dragons, you're doing the RPG things, right? You're solving the puzzles, you're looking for clues, you're putting things together, you're having hilarious conversations with your party members. You're in there and you're doing it. It's fun.
I'm actually surprised that you like escape rooms because you're not a big thrill seeker.
No.
And these can be like, you don't do roller coasters, you don't like scary movies, you don't do things that are high adrenaline. And depending on these escape rooms, they can be pretty high adrenaline.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not like claustrophobic or anything.
Sure.
Like, I know I'll get out.
Okay, that's fair. So here's a question. Have you done any like scary ones? Scary things like zombies or, I don't know, haunted house escape rooms?
I mean, I did like a pirate one and there was a jump scare where like you unlock something and it was like a spring-loaded like skeleton popped out of the wall and a big like scream happened. But I mean, that's fun. I've never been in one that was like so convincing like that you're not gonna get out of here and there's a murderer downstairs and like it's just for fun.
That's fair. What do you like about it?
I like about it that you get that RPG feeling. You get that LARP action without having to do the LARP thing. And you can invite friends. And you can invite friends that not going to sit down and play Pathfinder with you, and definitely not going to reserve an empty building on your college campus to play Vampire of the Masquerade with you. But they'll definitely go spend 45 minutes in an escape room with you.
That's a good call. And it's a great team building exercise too.
I'm worried. I think that might be becoming a meme. Like that might becoming a punchline for like corporate world, right? Like you get your pizza party or you get your escape room kind of thing.
You really get to learn who the nerds are in your office when you play an escape room for sure.
So you've done an escape room with coworkers. I have not had that experience yet.
I might have told this story on the podcast, but a year ago, when I was still in Santa Barbara, our new principal had the admin team and athletic director, activities director, and like head counselors, and paid for all of us to go do the escape room there in Santa Barbara. And I think we've talked about this before because I think you said Andrew did the same one for his birthday later that year. Right. The like D&D based 4 different rooms and you're solving these puzzles. And I was I was kind of a naysayer, like I really didn't want to do it, but I felt obligated, whatever. Team building, okay, fine. And I was kind of just standing in the first room and looking around, and all the like really smart people were like, oh, let's try to figure out this puzzle. And I'm like, this is a quest.
Yeah.
This is a quest, and they're missing all the big points to this quest. So I'm like, you guys go to that book right there. It's the only book in there that looks like it's real. Open it up. Oh, yes, there's the clue. A clue. I kept saying it and nobody would laugh, right? Blue's Clues. A clue.
Oh, right.
and then they were like, da, 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 da. And I was like, okay, look at the symbols on the pictures. Everybody, they match the symbols that are on that first page of that book. Just do. And I didn't have all the answers, but I definitely like, this is so D&D. It's not even funny.
Right.
And they were like, oh, you're so good at this. I'm like, no, I've played D&D.
You didn't say you're like, oh yeah, I keep telling you idiots, I'm a genius. Get to my level.
No, I'm like, nope, just y'all need to play more D&D. And then the other rooms were more puzzle-like and less D&D-like, so more people got involved. In fact, I remember one of the rooms, we couldn't figure out everyone was thinking the puzzle was being solved in a different way. And then the head counselors were just like goofing off somewhere else in the room. And like, they thought they broke a piece off of the wall, and it was the piece we needed to solve the puzzle.
Stay on target, people.
No, I think we had this discussion with Nancy last season.
Oh, yeah.
And Nancy talking about the escape rooms that she's done. But I've done one there, and then I've done some at like conferences. Where it's just a single room. It's not like multiple rooms because it's in the conference hall.
Like a mobile one.
Yeah. I've thought about like bringing in a company to set one up for like a PD day for fun.
Yeah.
Like sending like English department, like see who can bust through the room the fastest. And you can do the corporate pizza party and escape room by creating a competition.
I know. I kind of want to do an escape room for work too, but I'm like, I don't want to be a meme.
Yeah, well, you either be the meme or not have
don't
fun.
get to go to an escape room, I guess.
Exactly. I'm telling you, though, this is not an escape room, but we've got to plan a trip south to that VR.
To the VR
thing.
one, yeah.
Yeah, like we really got to do that. Maybe this summer.
Yeah, if that was closer, I would definitely take a team over there. It's just a little far away.
I mean, you got vans, you can do it.
We're at the tech department. There are no seats in our vans. Just shelves.
You'll have to take all 6 of them.
Everybody sit crisscross applesauce and hang on to a shelf.
Just lay in the back under the blanket. No one will know.
Oh my gosh, I have a story about that, but it is not for the podcast.
Oh, can't wait to hear it.
Anyways, escape rooms.
Escape rooms are amazing.
It's like LARPing, but without the humiliation. That's what I like about it.
Bump. All right. Well, shout out to our new Patreon subscriber, Francisco Rivera. Thank you and welcome, nerd. And anyone else who wants to join our Patreon nerdisms, find us, patreon.com/nerdbestfriends.
Hell yeah. Be like Francisco. He's the coolest nerd. What?
How about some nerd mail?
Nerd mail.
Last episode, Rob, we talked about cosplay and costuming, I think, in your What I Like About It.
Oh, yeah. Then I just trolled them all because I don't want to LARP.
You can enjoy it and appreciate it without doing it. I think that's what we came 100%, out of last episode.
Thank you.
So we were talking about...
I rent out the college building and run a game of Vampire the Masquerade? No. Do I think it's actually really awesome? Yes, of course I do.
Absolutely. And we were talking about Allison from last season and foam core and all the things that they do in Hollywood. So we got some nerd mail to talk about, if you remember, maybe about 10 years ago or so, maybe a little bit longer. I think the Monte Carlo in Las Vegas, the top of it lit on fire. And the whole hotel didn't burn down, but there was a fire at the top of the hotel. And that fire was because those facades at the top of these hotels were all like some sort of foam core instead of heavy building materials at the very tops of these buildings. So I just thought that was really interesting. Like about a decade ago, about 95% of the decorative tops on the strip in Las Vegas was foam core. And then that fire happened and they had to like get up to code. But I thought that was really interesting. It's the same kind of materials and other building materials of some sort, but to make these tops facades just more decorative without having to be heavy building and top heavy, right, over these like gigantic casino hotels.
I could see that. I mean, not necessarily like there would be like gargoyles, but like any kind of molding that's just big and bulky and additions to, it's just a rectangular building, but you put like that molding on the top and like different decorations. Yep. Of course you would use foam core and just spray it with spackle.
Yes. So I thought that was really interesting. Thank you, listener, for sending us that fun bit.
That is very cool.
Did you get any mail, Rob?
I actually did not get a mail, an official mail, but I did have a listener talk to me in person and just remind me. Basically, the comment was, "Dude, your music slaps." I was like, fun fact: when we record the podcast, we don't play the music. So thanks.
We're reminded how cool it is when we listen.
I'm sure it's great. No, our music is great. I really like it.
We can give a shout out if you just give me a minute.
No. The only place to hear that music is on our podcast. Tune in every other week. Crank it up in your car. Bass boost. Roll down the windows. Bop, bop, bop. It wasn't.
That's the thing.
I thought it was just like part of a podcast package of music you bought.
It is not. I actually searched a lot for our podcast music. And then once I found the one that's our theme song, I searched that person's others. And that's how I found the interlude music in the same style.
Did we get permission for that? Are we paying for this?
It's from a site that it's free, domain free.
Oh, then this person is a hero. We should shout him out.
Okay.
I was worried for a second. We were discovering in real time a copyright infringement.
Nope. It is royalty free audio tracks. So you can use it for whatever.
Is tracks with a CK or is it with an X?
Luckily CK.
Okay.
Our theme song and interlude music, I want to give a shout out to Nature's Eye on Pixabay. That's where our music comes from. The user Nature's Eye wrote it, and it's royalty-free music for us, and we chose it as our theme song, and I'm so glad for it because I agree it does slap. And I remember the first time I heard it, I went, oh my gosh, Rob's got to hear this. And I sent it right to you, and you sent me this like full caps exclamation filled text, like, this is our theme song. Mm-hmm. And you gave me this. I like it because 1, blah, 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 2, blah, 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 3. And that was before like ChatGPT. So I know that you actually.
I know it was real. That's the real problem with ChatGPT is it sounds just like I do in real life. And everybody's like, oh, well, Rob didn't even write that. I'm like, no, that's how I talk. It's really how I write.
That's really me. Yeah. Well, thank you, listener. Our music does slap. And thank you, Nature's Eye.
Is it Nature's Eye like nature is I, or Nature's Eye like EYE?
EYE.
Aha. Nature's Eye is looking at you and creating banger podcast tracks.
Yeah, it reminds me, I'm gonna go on Pixabay soon and see if they've made any new stuff. Maybe we can spruce up
change it. I don't know if we could ever change it.
Maybe we'll do some outro music or something.
Maybe if more heroes like Francisco Rivera join the Patreon and we start offering more different kinds of content, we will need more different kinds of themes that slap just as hard as the Nerd Best Friends theme song. Slap so hard they should lose custody.
Slap so hard it hurt your mama. My ultimate wish is to someday ask Nature's Eye to make sheet music and have it recorded by like real instruments and then like be able to say, Nature's Eye, we want to buy your song exclusively. Come on, Patreon. We need some help so we can get exclusive rights and then actually record it with live instruments. Sick. That's my ultimate dream.
A stretch goal. I love it.
Yes. Ultimate. On to the episode. We're going to talk about video games today. And I know we've mentioned before, Rob, you and I, this is not an area now anymore that either of us are really, really deep in. We're the generation that grew up with analog and nothing to 8-bit to...
We're the generation that grew up with sitting in your room and bouncing a tennis ball off the wall.
Yeah, pretty much. And then Oregon Trail, right? Like that was exciting. We've lived through a childhood of all of this into adulthood, into how amazing video games are now. So valid. We can still talk about video games even though we're not knee deep in it right now.
And hopefully it will elicit some comments and some interaction, because I will tell you one of the things that I have that I'm tangentially aware of, but have never participated really in. And I guess we'll get to it later, but like the Call of Duty oeuvre that absorbs so many people's lives, right? Like I definitely know of people who play Call of Duty regularly with a group of friends. They're battle brothers, much like I play D&D 3 or 4 times a week, right? Like it's scheduled and committed and I love it. And they're the same way, but they're in there doing their Black Ops or whatever it is.
For sure. We were kind of like that with some games, but I'm not going to mention them yet. We're going to get there. There was a point we were playing some of the stuff in the same manner that folks now play Call of Duty or World of Warcraft or I don't know.
Sort of. Yeah.
Yeah. In some
but
way,
most
shape,
of
or
it
form.
we had to be in person for.
Yes, this was still pre the like sign online and play with anonymous people all over the place. We all had to sit in the same room
Right.
and play our split screens. But again, let's get to that.
Start from the beginning.
Yeah, let's start with the first video game you remember playing.
The first video game that I remember playing might have been an arcade game, or it might have been at a friend's house. I'm not really sure, but the one that I remember playing, like the big deal in my childhood was the Christmas we got the Nintendo Entertainment System that had the Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt combo. It was the box everybody was getting that year. I think it was 1984, and just pouring our hearts and souls into that thing. I don't know that ever again in my life did I have the magic of, that like classic Americana, like magical Christmas morning for a child that I did the year we got the Nintendo Entertainment System.
The original NES, that Duck Hunt game. There are bleeps and sounds that just take you right back. It's amazing how many hours we spent playing those games.
I'll be perfectly honest, I still don't understand how the technology of that gun works and how it knew where I was pointing at that computer screen. Not computer, it was a TV. It was a TV. It was like a tube television. How did it know where that thing was going and how to interact with it? I literally don't know how that technology works.
It was a real gun, and you were really shooting ducks.
Just shooting microscopic bits into my TV.
I remember getting really mad at the TV and putting the gun right up to the TV. Did you ever do that?
Oh, 100%. You did it. Yeah. You're like, I hit that guy.
I totally hit it.
Yeah. Well, totally stupid dog. Oh, this little laugh.
It would laugh at you, yeah.
And now every NHL team in North America has a graphic on their like Jumbotron thing for when they play the Anaheim Ducks of that exact thing. The dog comes up wearing the team's jersey, holding two ducks.
Yes. Good call.
I think I've shared on the podcast before, we really tried to beat Mario Brothers, and it probably seems silly now because it's been around so long that like everybody knows all the shortcuts, or you just look online and you can find the shortcuts. I've seen people speed run Super Mario Brothers in like 6 minutes or some ridiculous thing like that.
Right.
But we didn't know about all that stuff. There wasn't really a good way to share all that stuff back then, at least not for kids. And I mean, it took forever to get through that game, and just huge sessions, just marathon, wearing out those A and B buttons, and I never beat it. My dad did though.
I remember you mentioned a couple episodes ago.
Yeah, I had to go to bed. And he stayed up all night and he beat it, and I found out at breakfast the next morning. I did it. I beat the game. What happened? Well, he was there and he was throwing axes and breathing fire, and I finally got to the other side and got him. And I'm like, and that was a funny story. And my dad never played it again.
Oh, that's good stuff. Yeah, and in my household, so I had an older brother. He was older than us by 4 years. Older than me by 4 years. I'm the second oldest, right? And so I think he would go over to friends' houses and play stuff. And eventually somehow we got an Atari. And I think most technology that I had was because my brother got it. And when he moved on to the next thing, we got whatever it was that was next, right? So I remember having an Atari. I remember playing Pong, but we're a little bit too young for that to have been like the game of the moment for us. I just remember I probably had the cartridge for Atari and I played it a couple times. What I do remember is Snoopy versus the Red Baron. And I used to play this game forever. And you're just Snoopy he's wearing his aviator stuff and he's flying on his doghouse and you're shooting at other planes. And then
this looks great for an Atari game.
Yeah, you would get a little like 4 bullet holes across his doghouse, and then you would no longer be flying. You lost your life. But yeah, Snoopy versus the Red Baron. That was a game that I played. I remember sitting in my room, like you've seen the house I grew up in.
Oh yeah.
If you picture, I think when we were in teens, by the time you and I met, I was sharing like the main room with my sister, and then there was the bathroom, and then opposite the bathroom was another bedroom, and I think my parents were in that room. Like you probably never would have walked into that room. Okay. But when I was growing up, before you and I met, when I was elementary school age, my sister and I shared that smaller room, and so I remember my bed was right up against this like built-in dresser that had a little cove, and our little TV was there, and my little Atari was there. And I was playing Snoopy versus the Red Baron for hours. I would play the heck out of that game. But that's that's the first I remember playing and like falling in love with video games. And I love Snoopy, so it was like extra bonus fun to have that Atari and play the Snoopy game.
That's incredible. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I never saw this game. That's so fun.
And you might be seeing like a cleaned up version, obviously.
Right. No, it looks pretty
really
rough.
Okay. Now I'm curious. Hold on, I want to look.
What
oh yeah, that's it.
like.
Oh my gosh, that's it. I mean, it has shades of Mario on some of these scenes, right?
Sure, yeah.
Little shades of the blocks and the things like you had to. I mean, you're basically just going up and down, and you're shooting at other planes and avoiding hazards. But yeah, I had that game and it was great, and I loved it. And that was the first video game I remember playing.
Oh my gosh, Snoopy versus the Red Baron.
Let's go on to the next category here, talking about consoles. So for me, it was, right, I had the Atari, and then my older brother got the Nintendo, so we got the Atari. Then the year came, I think, that we got the Super Nintendo, and I remember that Christmas because my grandparents got me and my brother a game, and it was addressed to both of us, and we accidentally opened the game for Super Nintendo before we opened the big box with our names on it. So Carlos opens it, and he looks at me, and it says Super Nintendo, and I'm like, we don't have a... And then the realization, and we both start looking around for the big box, and my mom's like, oh, you guys weren't supposed to open that one yet.
Or was it better that you did because you got
I mean, it was almost better that way, right? Yeah. So I remember the year we got the Super Nintendo, and that was for the whole family, and it was in the main living room instead of one of our bedrooms, and it was always hand-me-downs, right? And then once I got to college, I know I had a Dreamcast for a little while because I loved Crazy Taxi.
Oh my gosh, the Dreamcast. I remember Crazy Taxi. Was that Paperboy was on that one too?
Paperboy was on Nintendo.
Oh,
but Crazy Taxi, and the great thing about the Dreamcast was that you could burn the CDs, you could burn the games instead of buying them. That's why they went out of business. But
you just pick it up from Blockbuster and make a copy,
burn it and return it. Yep. And then
burn it and return it, baby. That was the Dreamcast way.
And then I went to Xbox. I actually never got into the PlayStation. To this day, I've never owned a PlayStation. And the closest I've come to a PlayStation, nope. And I was going to say the Switch, but that's Nintendo, so never mind.
Right.
And we have a Switch now, and I still have like an Xbox X and play a few games here and there on the Xbox. But that's my console history. What about consoles you had?
Well, I told you about the Nintendo that we got when I was a wee lad. After that was the Super Nintendo. Like we were in the business of Nintendo. I had to get the next Mario game. I had to get the next Zelda game, like that kind of thing. Yes. So it was Nintendo, Super Nintendo, the Nintendo 64. That was kind of when it broke. I think the Nintendo 64 came out when we were in high school. And then when we got into college, it was Xbox time. The Xbox came out. I remember Mike from work had an Xbox and he's like, you guys got to come over and play Halo. This is going to change your lives.
Halo
and
was
it did. Like, I mean, that was insane when that first person shooter came out and the world was so big and the graphics looked so cool and you could play with your friends and you could play against your friends. You could team up with your friends. You could play capture the flag and all this kind of stuff. Like it was just opened up this whole new way of playing video games kind of socially and stuff. And it just looked so good. So there was Xbox, and then it was Xbox 360 when that came out. And then there was a kind of a drought for me. Oh, you know what? We went to the Wii. We had a Wii after that.
I had a Wii too. I still have it.
Yeah, because we're like, oh, look at this. It's all like gets you moving around and that kind of stuff. We didn't play like Wii tennis, Wii bowling. I didn't play any of that stuff. What we did play was Guitar Hero. There was a hot minute there where Guitar Hero was everything.
Yes. I played Guitar Hero on Xbox though. I kept it on Xbox.
On the Wii.
GarageBand. Was it GarageBand? No. There was Guitar Hero, and then there was the PlayStation one, and then they eventually were available on both consoles.
Probably.
It might have been GarageBand because they had the drum set first. And then eventually it was available for Xbox. And I had like Guitar Hero Metallica and broke my drum set playing.
Heck yeah!
Playing Enter Sandman.
Lars Ulrich, eat your heart out.
Yep. And on easy mode, and I still broke the drum set.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
everyone had that Guitar Hero carpal tunnel for sure.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
And the biggest crime of humanity is that Guitar Hero had no transferable skills to actually playing the guitar in any way.
Not at all.
Which
Not
is
at all.
such a shame because I probably spent 10,000 hours playing Guitar Hero. I could be a concert guitarist if I had applied myself in a different way. But you figure out how to gamify practicing scales on guitar. I'd be a virtuoso.
But I actually would get annoyed because having any musical skill did not help you whatsoever in that game, and that just seemed opposite to me.
It was color
all
matching.
just color matching and patterns, and I was like, "This is not music. I'm trying to
Right.
play to what I'm listening.
It's
and I
literally
can hear
like, in Back to the Future 2, where he goes into the 80s cafe and he's like, oh, I'm a crack shot at this, and plays the arcade game. And the kid's like, that's like a baby's game. Like,
Yeah,
that was
that's
Guitar
right.
Hero. You're basically
That's right,
like,
yes.
yellow,
Yep.
blue, green, yellow, blue, green.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
so silly. It's like Candyland.
Guitar Hero. I haven't thought about that in a hot minute.
Oh man, there was a time where that was everything. And then there was like a big gap because I became a dad and I was working hard. And then very shortly after that, I met Adam again and we started playing Dungeons and Dragons. And then that took over my life and I spent my extra time doing that kind of stuff instead of video games.
3D printing instead of 3D video
Yeah,
gaming.
exactly. I was painting and writing games and, that kind of stuff. And it took that space away, right? We only have so much time after work to do stuff. And I reprioritized to tabletop stuff around there. But then I ended up having a boy who turned, I don't know, he probably turned 10 or something and was like, I want a PlayStation. All right. And it was, a huge driver for that was the Spider-Man game. Spider-Man on PS4 was absolutely incredible. It was a must-have. Like, we're getting a PlayStation 4. We're playing these games. It's incredible. Yes. It's awesome. I got into Overwatch. Like, that was the game I got when we got the PlayStation. I was like, oh, look at this. And I started playing Overwatch a bunch. Just incredible. We're rocking the PS5 now on the main TV. I still have the PS4 here in the game room. And sometimes I'll play. There's a NASCAR game where the driving mechanic of your season is posting on Twitter. It's incredible.
What?
Yes.
That's not the one where like you can
and your contracts by blasting things out on Twitter to the point where like you can just like troll people on Twitter and then on the track they'll crash into you and try to wreck you on purpose because you've been blasting them. It's amazing.
I remember the one that you could be a villain or a good guy depending on how you raced on the track, and then how that happened is how they would treat you and like try to crash into you if you were the bad guy.
Yep. I think that mechanic has stayed throughout the history of like whatever the EA Sports like NASCAR game that comes out every year. But this particular one, they just decided we're going to hitch our wagons to Twitter. And it's everything. It's like,
that's
it's
hilarious.
The game within the game. Who am I going to talk trash to on Twitter? If I do to this company, that means this company will like me more and I can get a different contract. It's
I'll get more money.
It's banana pants.
Well, it's funny that you say that you had a gap. I didn't really ever have a gap because, and we'll talk about this in a minute, so I'm not going to get too deep into it, but thanks to Grand Theft Auto, I actually didn't have much of a gap. I would come home early in my career and knock out some stuff in Grand Theft Auto, but I'll talk about why in a minute, a little bit later. But I stayed on Xbox. I still have the Xbox X, and I play the games that I have on it. And then just recently we got Nintendo Switch, the newest one with the bigger screen. But all we really do is play Mario Kart on it. I mean, I got Roller Coaster Tycoon, but is that really a video game? We'll talk about that later.
I mean, you could play the game everybody was playing during the pandemic with the little raccoon and you farm the turnips.
Oh, the farm land.
It's not called Animal Farm.
Animal Crossing?
That's the socialist book. Animal Crossing, yes.
Yeah.
You could play Animal Crossing. You could play Zelda.
Yeah. Zelda's great.
But it's not your favorite game of all time?
What's not my favorite game of all time? Honestly, like Madden, I think, is my favorite game of all time. Like those EA Sports, NC2A, when they used to do the NC2A games. NC2A game from EA Sports might come back now that the NIL is available in college sports. So the big history behind that is every year EA Sports would come out NC2A,
Yeah.
O2, NC2. I think consecutive years you bought me the newest NC2A because you know I played it all the time for like Christmas. So they had to stop because there was big to do about using the likeness or name or images of college players who are amateurs, and they can't make money off of it. There was some lawsuit that said the college should not be able, like NC2A should not be able to make money off of their likeness, so they stopped making that game.
Oh, they
It
didn't
might
just
come
put
back
like
now.
generic dudes in there. Like it
But
had
nobody wanted to buy generic
Right.
dudes,
Okay.
right? Now college athletes can own the rights to their name, image, and likeness, which is why you can now see college athletes in commercials or wearing they're walking into their stadiums wearing Ray-Ban sunglasses or Beats headphones because they can now be sponsored using their name, image, likeness. It's a whole like money thing that's crazy in NC2A now. So like I read a stat, and I know we're way off topic, but I read a stat.
No, we're not. This is the good stuff here. I have questions.
This past year, like current school year, last year's Heisman Trophy winner and this year's Heisman Trophy winner combined made about $12 million. Like they're making millions off their name, image, and likeness, which some say they should be able to.
I mean, there's money out there. People want to give it to them.
I mean, I'm on the fence about it. I think if we're still giving them, when you're talking about the Division I athletes, the big time guys, these guys are getting their tuition paid for. They're getting all of their gear paid for. They're getting the best medical care available. They have private tutors. Their books are covered. Like they have so many supports. Like all their food is covered. Like there's so many supports. I think if they're going to make money off of NIL, they should have to pay for all that stuff. That's all I'm saying. But I mean, neither here nor there. NC2A for EA Sports may come back because of the NIL. It just depends on how much money people are going to want to have their player in it. So
when they sell a game, when they sell Madden 2024, does every player get a fraction of a penny for every copy sold? It doesn't just go to the team or to the NFL total.
However the NFL contracts work, they do need those players' permissions to use their name and their image and their likeness. So it's just different with the professionals. I think you're right. I think it's a bulk money that goes to the team, and then the team divvies it up however they do it. But the point is that they can, and the college kids didn't used to be able to before. They didn't have a say in whether or not their name could be used.
Earlier, you were talking about the college athletes, and you were like, yeah, they get their cleats for free, and they get their jerseys for free, and they get their books covered, and and I was like, oh, they get their books covered? Like, that's fancy. Somebody puts a cover on their book? Like, like, remember when we were in high school and you had to cover your textbooks with like a paper grocery bag?
There was an art to folding those grocery bags. And you could get fined by the library if you didn't have a book cover on it when you turned it in.
Cover your book.
Yes, that's a loss. And then you just like if you were poor like me and had to figure out how to cover your books with the grocery bag. Yeah. The paper grocery bag, and then you would like decorate your book and blah,
that was
blah, blah.
The coolest way. I thought the grocery bag, the brown paper grocery bag cover was the coolest. And that was, here's a funny story. That was so ingrained in me that like, well, if you have a book, you have to take care of it. You have to put one of these covers on it. All of my second edition Dungeons and Dragons rule books had grocery bag paper covers on them that I just made myself.
That's amazing. And you remember, like, you could be real fancy when the Scholastic Book Fair came to town and buy those like stretchable, fancy ones.
The stretchable ones, but those were no good. They'd stretch out and just be like hanging there, and no bueno.
What was your favorite game of all time?
Oh yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Tangent over. What's your favorite game of all time?
Man, there's a ton. I mentioned Halo before, and that being just like such a cool experience because it was a social, like, it was social with all of our friends who were blown away with it and like us playing together and stuff. But I think even more than that, for some reason, probably because the game is better, I'm going to go with The Legend of Zelda, The Ocarina of Time. That game came out and it seemed at the time so sandboxy, such a cool plot, such a big world to like learn about. There are all these puzzles to figure out that didn't feel like they were just puzzles to put a puzzle in your face. when Andrew was younger, he would play a lot of those Lego games. The Lego games have these puzzles like, oh, you got to open the door, build this thing. And so it's like, cool, you just like hold B button and your little guy builds a Lego thing and you're done. Or drag this here and that there so the reds line up. And it's completely arbitrary and doesn't really have anything to do with the plot or how anyone would set up a door lock, to get to the other side of the thing.
Yeah.
Ocarina of Time felt different. It hit this sweet spot where I think I picked it up the summer between my senior year of high school and my freshman year at college. My girlfriend and I at the time would sit up in my room and we would play this game incessantly, just hours and hours and hours. And the deal was like, if you died, you had to hand the controller off to the other person. And so we would be trading back and forth and working our way through this game. Like we had to see where the story went. We had to get to the conclusion and we didn't finish over the summer. So school had started and we're like, we have to keep playing this game. I missed a lot of class because we had to play this game.
Wow.
And figure this out. And it's never been like that again. It's never been that like, this game has taken so much priority. I'm just going to sacrifice things and sit up here and watch and play this game. That's the one I always go back to if I have to choose. But there's been a lot of real good ones. I mean, Final Fantasy on Nintendo, I remember I like faked sick, like Calvin and Hobbes. I like held the thermometer up to my reading lamp in my room so I could pretend to have a fever and stay home and play Final Fantasy after I got that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones.
We'll say, although Mortal Kombat is a great video game, Donkey Kong is the best game ever.
Is that your choice? Oh no, your choice was Madden.
No, that was Billy Madison.
Yes, but I didn't know if you were going to commit to the bit.
No.
Go on a whole monologue about the greatness of Donkey Kong and the Donkey Kong universe. There's so many Donkey Kongs now. Ever since Donkey Kong Country and the invention of like Diddy Kong and Diddy Kong's mom and all this stuff, there's a whole thing.
Yeah,
the Donkey Kong cinematic universe is vast and varied, my friend.
Yet they made the Wreck-It Ralph film and not a Donkey Kong film. Like, I'm just saying.
Well, they hadn't figured out how to do the big crossover, like, because those were all original characters. It wasn't a Ready Player One situation where they licensed a bunch of stuff.
You're right.
Although, had they done that, if Wreck-It Ralph were made again and licensing was just unlimited, it would be pretty cool because you could have your Donkey Kong there and your Mario and your Princess, but then you could bring people over from like the other things. You'd have like Master Chief and his friends in there. They worked really hard to create legally distinct versions of other video game characters.
Okay, well, you were mentioning the social aspect to playing video games. Let's take a step back. Before we had consoles in our houses, widely, there were arcades, and that's where you had to go to play video games before these consoles were available in your home. So do you have like a favorite arcade game that you played?
Yes. And I don't know that we, in the 80s when we were young, probably too young to be dropped off at the arcade, arcades were insanely popular. They were just full of teenagers, in these malls all across America. I don't know that our hometown ever had a straight up full video game. Did it? Arcade?
It did. There was an arcade downtown. And I remember because my older brother used to be able to go and we weren't allowed to go. Right. But then it was shut down before I think you or I were of an age that we would be able to go. But there was a whole arcade. I just remember standing outside of it waiting, like my mom went in to get my brother or something. But we weren't allowed to go in it. And I was waiting for the day and then it shut down.
I don't remember it at all. We had to find, when we were coming up in junior high and high school, the arcades were now relegated to little pockets of arcade games in like the bowling alley. The pizza parlor or things like that. So I didn't have the full Gen X arcade experience that some folks did and just love and have that idea of like, I mean, we still have the tropes of like, well, you put your quarter on there to save your next turn and that kind of thing. Yep. But like the tournaments or the different theme nights or, crowds of people standing around behind somebody cheering them on because they were going to get the high score kind of thing. That experience. But there was a pizza joint that was in walking distance to our high school. I think it was called Mr. C's Pizza.
We had a Mr. C's across the street.
It was over in the Magnolia Shopping Center.
Oh, you're right. Mr. C's was
that what
Magnolia.
it was?
Yes. I don't know that I ever went with you to play there, though. I remember going to Rusty's.
but they had one of those machines that had like 4 games on it. One of them was Trouble Bubble, which everybody loves a Trouble Bubble.
Trouble
But
Bubble,
the game we went there for was Samurai Showdown 2. And
nice.
I don't know if anybody ever played this game or if it was popular anywhere else besides the Mr. C's Pizza in the Magnolia Shopping Center. But damned if I didn't put hundreds of dollars worth of quarters into the Samurai Showdown 2 machine. It was so fun because it was just, again, it was that magical time of youth where it was like, what are we doing after school? We're not going to do our homework. We ain't got jobs. We'll walk over to Mr. C's Pizza, play Samurai Showdown until we master every single one of these characters on the video game. And we're playing each other and we're continuing and we're quoting all the characters who never talked. They just kind of grunted and made, like Hadouken noises, Harubaru, like all this kind of stuff that we would just quote to the point where like we would be playing Dungeons and Dragons on the weekend or whatever. And, my fighter would do a move and we would just like yell Japanese gibberish and we had no idea what it meant because it was what the dude did when he spun around with his sword in Samurai Showdown 2. It was a fun game and it never caught on. Like that game is not around anymore. They never made console versions of it or anything. Like nobody knows Samurai Showdown 2, but man, I don't even know if there was a Samurai Showdown 1. They might have just put 2 on it to make it for marketing purposes.
Yeah, that could very well be the case. You are absolutely right.
So yes, we played a lot of. Actually, I think you're going to mention it, so I'll let you go for it. There were other games we played, but Samurai Showdown 2, that one holds a special place in my heart.
Same, because that arcade vibe was really the 80s, and we came of age teenagers in the 90s. And by the time that rolled around, like Atari and Super Nintendo were around. And I think that's, video killed the radio star. I think Nintendo killed the arcades because now people could pay $30 and play that game over and over without endless quarters, right?
100%.
But I was really much more of a pinball person. So when we'd go to Rusty's, I'd play the pinball machine. When I remember like jazz band trips to Vegas, and when Vegas used to have giant arcades, I remember when Luxor was like a newer hotel and they had that whole floor with a giant wall of pinball machines. I just remember playing stuff. I remember going to San Marcos Lanes and playing Marvel versus Capcom.
Marvel versus Capcom, 100%. Remember Ryan Jordan would just smoke us all at that game.
Crazy. Just I don't even know that he knew what he was doing. He was just
he most definitely did not. He just had his weird neurosis made him a great fast button masher.
And then I remember playing the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game and just throwing a lot of quarters at that game.
There was that one. There was the X-Men one, and there was the Simpsons one, and they were all that. The Simpsons
one was not as fun.
The Simpsons one was not good. The X-Men one was also good, but the TMNT one was by far the best. And it was that format with the 4 joysticks across. So you and your buddies had to jump in there and go for it. It was super cool.
I remember playing, what's it called? Like NFL Blitz, where it used to be like ridiculous tackles and unhuman-like. Just, it was fun because you could just late hit and keep just punching on a guy, and like it was violent. And then there's the old school off-road. Do you remember off-road where you're driving a little off-road motorcycle?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and you have just the little course. And there was 4 wheels across that console. I remember those, and I just remember that social aspect. And by the time we were in high school, we spent so much money on Cruising USA. We would Bogart all 4 of them across the wall.
Love Cruising USA. I love racing games, and I love Cruising USA because I was actually good at it. Like normally with video games, it's like, I'm going to play because I'm going to have fun, but I know I'm going to be the first one out, and I know I'm going to be the person spending the most money because I'm just not that guy. But the driving games I was actually good at, even before I had my driver's license. It just, I clicked. I could do it.
Yeah, I mean, it was so ridiculous and unrealistic. Any of us could win at any time. It was fun. Cruising USA was one that we spent a lot of time and money on.
That TMNT game is so cool.
It's still cool. I find
it is
we
cool,
find
and
it
it was
retro
way
places.
cooler. So it was way cooler than the console version because a version of that game came out again on Nintendo, and it was like, oh my gosh, I could play the turtle game at home, but you couldn't really because it was only 1 player, so you couldn't have like 4 players doing it like you could at the arcade. And Raphael in the arcade game, he threw size, just unlimited, just size thrown out of his hand. He was the ranged attack guy, so he was actually pretty good. In the Nintendo version, he didn't. He just had these little tiny things that he'd go like. So So you had to be
Lame.
right up against the stupid Foot Clan guy, and he would kill you every time. And you didn't have a choice. If it came to level 3, you had to play Route Hell. It was garbage.
Oh, that's no good.
But
Barcades
the
have
was
this.
Rad.
Totally rad. Barcades have it. Like retro barcades have it, and it still slaps. It's still so much fun.
Gosh, when I was up in Sacramento at that coin-op place, they had it and it was shut down. It was broken or something. I didn't get a chance to play.
You had free everything that night, and it was shut down.
And it was like one of 2 video games in that whole place where the screen was dark. Yeah,
where they knew that the whole thing would be taken by 4 people the entire night. That's what they shut it down. They knew better. Well, so Rob, tell me, you have the arcade games, we have these consoles we had grown up with, but at some point you said, there was a lull for you. Can you name a game that changed video games for you, that really
100%
changed your gaming experience and how you view your time on video games?
100%. It was one that I mentioned before. It was Halo. It was that Halo experience.
Yes.
It was our friend Mike had a PlayStation and it had Halo. And so we all worked together at high schools teaching marching bands. And so a lot of times the marching band gigs go late because you're doing your Thursday night practice and it doesn't end till 9, and then you got cleanup, or you're going to the Friday football game and staying through halftime and that kind of thing. And then you got to go figure out dinner, or like a comp, even if it's not too far away out of town, you're still not getting home until 10 o'clock or whatever, but it didn't matter. That was the time where we would go over to Mike's house and play Halo, all tired and exhausted. And we'd sit there and we'd play and we'd be shooting stuff up and that kind of thing. And just talking about the day, planning, again, a lot of times, most of it is the game itself, but a lot of times it's like, who was I with? What was I doing at that time? Yes. And at this time, it was Mike and Lizelle and Paul and me, and then later Maria. Just go over and sit on those couches after whatever we were doing, and we kind of debrief about our plans and the work we were doing, but then just have hilarious fun shooting each other and blasting things and blowing up and stealing each other's loot and stuff in Halo. And I liked it so much that was when I bought the Xbox. It was for Halo. And so I got Halo, and then that was when I had it for myself, that's when I started playing through the story, going through myself. Again, I was going to school full time and I was working pretty much full time and all this stuff. So it would always be late at night and I'd be sitting there in the dark playing Halo, and then, the flood and all this stuff. And just it was so, at that time, I mean, it probably looks silly, looking back at it now, but at that time it was so realistic. I was so focused and just immersed in it that it was actually scary. And I was running around shooting So it was great on a bunch of levels. It was great to play on my own. It was a super cool story and it looked unlike anything else. And then there was that social aspect too, where we were, a couple of nights a week playing those first person shooters and just having a great time talking trash and blowing each other up and just doing that thing. So I'm going to say that Halo really changed video games, even just the control of it, the 2-stick controller,
right? That was a big deal.
Was a big deal, right? 2 sticks, 2 triggers, all these buttons and stuff. You could do so much, and you kind of had to train your brain and fingers in a different way than you did from certainly any of the Nintendo consoles that I had before, or the joysticks and big buttons of the arcades. So,
and the big deal when they put the trigger on the front of the controllers, how that changed the game too.
Right. There was it the N64 or the GameCube that had the weird one in the middle?
Yeah, I never had either of those.
Yeah, no, it was a bad controller.
Yeah.
But that Xbox controller, that form factor is still around. If you go to buy a controller for your PC, it's basically that one.
Yeah.
So that is my answer. Halo changed everything for me in video games.
Well, I remember when we were on staff together eventually a few years later, playing that at your house with with Paul, and
it was probably Halo 2 by that point.
And probably Halo 2 by then. But the memory I have most vividly is how good Paul was at finding a corner and just sniping the heck out of us. And we would spend the whole time just trying to figure out where the heck he was and come up behind him and sneak attack him.
Oh yeah, it was everybody versus Paul.
Basically, because we'd be running around and boom, done. What the?
Paul was so good at that game, and he was such a hilarious jerk that even if we were playing through missions cooperatively, he would sneak up behind me, shoot me in the back of the head, and steal my loot. I'm like, "What are you doing? We're playing together." He's like, "I need that gun." I'm like, "What do you mean you need that gun?" He's like, "I'm better than you." he don't clear the level while my dude is like twitching on the floor. I'm like,
Oh,
well, I
that's
guess
good
we
stuff.
beat the level, but jeez, dude.
Now I have to find a gun, Paul. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll say for me,
Go
when
and
video
take
games
my gun.
changed for me, it's a similar story. Like Halo was one, and I agree with you. It was one of the first like really immersive storytelling. But even at the time, I was starting to have a little bit of trouble with first person games. I don't know if it's my eyes or my brain, but they make me really. I can't play them at all now. They make me really nauseous, and that was starting when Halo came out. Like I could never play Doom. Doom was huge on the CPUs, right? They were on computers. I could never play it. They made me really, really nauseous and sick. And I could play Halo for some time. I struggled with it. But when Grand Theft Auto came out, and I want to say like I didn't play the first couple of them. Maybe the third when it was like Miami based when I first started playing it. And what changed it for me was you had the storyline, and it wasn't an immersive storyline. It was cinematic with cutscenes that told the story. And of course it's crime filled and tense and same. Like it's sometimes scary because you're like some person doing bad things and
working for the mob.
Yeah. And so you had that aspect to it, but the cinematic part of it was great. What changed for me in my enjoyment of games is that Grand Theft Auto made it so you don't actually ever have to do the storyline. You could just roam the world and do random stuff and affect the world in a better or good or bad place. Like it didn't matter. And it was one of the first games that if not the first game that you could do that, just freely roam the world.
Right.
And there were little almost mini games within it. So you could like go to the arcade and there were like little games that you could have your character play. One version of it, you had to take your character to the gym and do a workout. Otherwise he'd get slow and fat, right? Like there was Los Santos that was supposed to be Los Angeles. You also like you could get energy if you were dying. You could go into like a chicken joint and buy some like chicken wings, or go into a burger joint and buy a burger, and it would give him health, which was always funny to do when police were like after you. He's stopping to buy a burger and they'd come in and kill you. But it was the first one, just that free roaming. And very early in my career on the Xbox, that kept me buying the Xbox. I would come home from a particularly frustrating day at work and just turn on Grand Theft Auto and blow a bunch of stuff up and just be a version of a person that I would never be in real life, but fun to like just destroy things and like walk down the street and start fights with random people just to see what they would do. And just that free roaming aspect of it was just almost sometimes more enjoyable. And when you beat the game, because I always beat them, you just continue on and can just do all these side quests. Like you could steal an ambulance and then become an ambulance responder.
You just go out as an EMT.
Yeah.
Like, I got the
and it was a
paddles, I'm
side
good.
quest. If you do 50 of them, you unlock this other thing, right? It's pretty wild what they were able to do in creating these games and these storylines. And granted, I mean, they can be perverse and violent, and some of it was like, this is a little hard to stomach in the storylines, but you can look past that. Then there's just a lot of flexibility and a lot of creativity, and I really appreciate it. Like you could change the radio stations, like depending on what your mood was, you can change the radio stations in the car you stole, and like really interesting stuff.
It was influential, right? So many games now are that open sandbox world where it's like you don't have to do the quest. You can just wander and people will come up to you and give you something to do. Or you could ignore them too.
Exactly.
Whether it's Red Dead Redemption or Skyrim or whatever, you are grabbing a car or you're grabbing a horse or whatever and just go and go and go forever and all that kind of thing. It's just so big. So totally influential.
That leads us to now, video games now. I think we both have mentioned that neither of us are really into the gaming world. You maybe vicariously through Andrew.
Exactly. I'm looking over Andrew's shoulder. I've been seeing some pretty good 5-star games lately.
Tell me about video games now for you.
So right now it is, again, it's watching Andrew go through these games and play and just getting wrapped up in a lot of these cutscenes and cinematics that they build in there. I'll mention Spider-Man again. The Spider-Man PS4 game, or I guess it was both, and then Spider-Man 2 on the PS5 are just fantastic. Like they're better than Spider-Man movies. It looks so good. The web swing is so perfect, better than perfect. And it's got a great story there. And the characters from the comic books that you love are there. The voice acting is outstanding. Like, it is definitely, I mean, we talked about like, what's your favorite game that you played? Like, this is my favorite game that ever exists, even if I'll never go through it and beat it. But, you know, I sat there and watched Andrew do it. Like, it's my favorite game that ever existed. It's just absolutely insanely cool. Baldur's Gate 3 was a big game just last year, won all the awards, got all the buzz and stuff. And it's incredible. It's awesome. It is this perfect balance between a turn-based RPG and that kind of action. And it's very faithful to the Dungeons and Dragons rules.
Yeah.
I know people who have been playing Dungeons and Dragons for years and years with me, and they're like, oh, I started playing Baldur's Gate 3 and now I totally get how to play Dungeons and Dragons. Like,
oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
That's a terrible teacher, because like, oh, now I understand how this stuff works. You know, rules, which makes sense, right? Like, you've talked about that paralysis before of like, well, I want to pay attention to the role play, but I'm very worried about this character sheet full of math. If the video game does all the math for you and you're just kind of making the choices, then you learn about that side of it. And I think that opens you up. But The Last of Us was huge because it was that super cool game. And then they made a show that was like video reference faithful to the game itself and turned into this huge
side by side. Yes.
What a cool move, and what a cool world we live in, to be like, the video games are so good now that we're like bringing them to different genres for entertainment
or different mediums. Yeah.
Red Dead Redemption 2. Obviously, we spent years of our lives in a D&D campaign with a bunch of jamokes that were trying to pretend they were playing that game through our D&D. So there have been some real good ones. But that's the kind of stuff that I'm looking at now, and it just blows me away. It's like nothing else, and it's definitely not like it was when I was playing them.
I mean, even 10 years ago, it's gotten so far. And you're right, like the cinematic scenes that they have now are so real. Sometimes you can't tell it's a video game. It's so good. And the quality is so high, and the storyline is so good, and they get real voice actors or real actors voicing the characters. And to tell you, The Last of Us, when you can do a side-by-side comparison, means they're thinking about things like cinematography. They're thinking about angles and cuts and edits in a very cinematic way. And that's how they're making video games now. It's phenomenal.
In the 80s and 90s, there were music videos, and a ton of folks that made really good music videos became the next movie producers and directors. I think that's happening now with video games. Like, these folks that are putting together, these studios that are putting these video games together, they're going to be the next heads of studios for Disney and Paramount and those kinds of places.
Agreed, totally. It's unfortunate for me that I have this issue playing video games now. They're almost too realistic to the extent that, again, I'm getting nauseous. I can't play first player games at all. They have to be able to have a pan out versus that first player point of view, or I can't play it. And I tried. The last one I tried was a Walking Dead game, which already I'm on edge for because zombies, but you had no choice but to play first player. And I don't remember the game. It was a bargain bin on Xbox at some point, like when I was still living in Las Vegas. I played it for 20 minutes and I had to take the next day off of work. I was dizzy and sick. Like, I can't do it anymore. And it makes me sad because there's some great storyline games out there.
You might try Spider-Man. Spider-Man's a third person game.
It moves around a little too much.
But it moves around real smooth and real crazy. Yes, it does. Because he's all flipping everywhere. It's the greatest Spider-Man ever.
I probably wouldn't move as fast as Andrew does.
Maybe so. I did pan the camera around and stuff. I'm like, whoa.
I did have a game. It was called LA Noire. It was like a movie that I had seen called LA Confidential. Now, they're not related whatsoever, but it's the same era of time. And it was a great storyline. And I was able to have like not a first person view. So I was able to get through it. I remember playing that game. The problem with that game is it didn't have the expansive like world building after that. I finished the game and that was it.
It was pretty linear.
So but that was a great game. I don't know, again, maybe 12, 13 years ago, but lately, it's doing other things than playing video games. But we did get the new Switch and we play Mario Kart. I got a couple of little cheap games that I enjoy playing from time to time. But more than anything, I mean, we started this conversation talking about how we like lived through from childhood to adulthood through this evolution of video gaming. What I really enjoy seeing, and shout out to my brother Carlos, who he participates and knows is very knowledgeable about all the vintage collection and gaming. People will pay a lot of money for original Nintendo systems. They'll pay a lot of money for cartridges that work, and Super Nintendos and GameCubes and 64s and, you know, the original Xboxes and Game Boys. And there's actually a whole industry out there. There's a couple of online places you can go right now and buy working console of whatever whatever you want, and games whatever you want. I probably could find Snoopy versus the Red Baron on Atari and some of these places. And there's conventions and cons for all of this stuff. So I really appreciate that our childhood is still around and people still love it and play them.
What I love is the videos of people taking apart the old ones to like clean, like they find when it's all old and dusty and dirty, and they take it apart and they clean it all up and they refurbish the buttons, and they got their
and they resolder,
cleaning, resoldering the wires so that they're strong again, putting it all together and making it like new. Those are super cool.
There's a whole industry of it, and I'm really impressed by it. I'm really impressed. I would get some of these old games and play them for fun.
Maybe so. You know what I notice is that I think a lot of those old games were really, really hard. When I think back at those Nintendo games that we were playing, like that stupid Ninja Turtle one, or like Battletoads, or like the DuckTales game and all that stuff. And I think I heard somewhere, and I don't know if it was true or if it was just like a conspiracy theory of the idea of like, well, people are renting these games. So if they're too easy, they're going to rent them in a weekend and they're going to beat them and then they're never going to rent them again. So we got to make the games really hard so that they have to keep coming back and either rent them over and over and over again, or just buy them for our inflated price of $50 in 1989 or whatever.
I think that's a good point, because that was part of the Blockbuster experience, right? Eventually there was a whole game section. And if you wanted to rent the hot game because your family couldn't afford to buy it, like that was my experience too, going down to, what was it, Captain Video down the street and seeing what games they had to rent for our Nintendo after Grandma and Grandpa helped us buy one.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
that
you
was
weren't going to beat it that weekend.
No.
You were going to keep coming back and coming back.
Hey, the late fees are going like, can I check this back out? And then there's always a waiting list. Like you had to get on the waiting list. Yeah, that's a good point. You can play them forever.
Gosh. But things that we're in the video games now section, but once again, of course, we can't help but talk about ourselves. What I see is the next revolution, or why this industry is so strong, is because of the ubiquity of solid internet Wi-Fi connections in everybody's house, right?
Yes.
You've got to have internet in your house. You might have, if you're a kid like Andrew, right? You might have parents who are working out of the house. You're going to have strong internet, or just need to do day-to-day business or whatever. You have to have internet in your house. And so if you have that, then you can connect with your friends and play video games, even though they're not in the same room, which is huge, because now you can play with your friends from school. You can play with your friends from sports. You can play with your friends from wherever. You don't have to live on the same street. Because let's be honest, that's a lot of the people we were playing with. Like with me, I didn't have 100%. A bunch of brothers and sisters. It was like I played with that kid and Therese and her brother Paul, and they'd come over and play video games because we lived on the same street, and that was just kind of the way it was. But now these kids play with wherever, and they're playing with their friends. Before the kids my son hangs out with, before they all had phones, they had Discord, and they would get on Discord, they'd call each other up, they'd play the game. Some games they couldn't play together because this kid's got a PlayStation, that kid's got an Xbox, and that kid has a Super Nintendo. But more and more, they're figuring out, hey, if we put cross-platform play, we'll sell copies no matter what console we're on, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, this is something that is just part of my son's life, is you hear that little Discord noise, and then they've got a group together and they're playing whatever game. A lot of times it might be like those first person shooter games and stuff, but because of the cross-platform play, depending on the group he's with, I've seen them play like Uno. I've seen them play Monopoly online, because they're finding, like, one, games that they all have, or games that you can download for free, and two, ones that have cross-platform play. So it doesn't matter what they're on. They can just get a big group. What's cool is the voice chat, right? They're not just on there in silence. They're all on Discord. They're laughing their heads off. They're talking trash to each other. They're just having a great old time from the comfort of their own home. So,
And you don't have to put out all the snacks and clean up after their friends.
I don't have one of the snacks. It does smell like a locker room in there. It's great, but it almost is like the idea of booking it, or like it's come full circle. We talked about that arcade experience was everybody's there, you're talking, you're chatting, there's a meeting place, that kind of thing. And that went away for a little while with the consoles, but now the video arcade is everywhere. It's so easy, and it's so, Discord is free. A lot of these games that they can download and play cross-platform are free, or included in your service, I should say.
Free 99. Rob, what's the nerdiest thing you did this week?
Oh boy.
It sounds like a good one.
Okay. So how am I going to,
Here we go.
So you've heard of onlyfans.com.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
I have.
Well, this is onlygames.com.
Oh my gosh. Do I even want to know?
Okay. So only-games.com. I've killed Annalise. She's she's terrified of where this is going to go.
Continue, please.
You can connect with hot gaming singles in your area. No, none of that is true.
I don't even know what to say right now. Okay, only/games.com is...
Only-games.com is a place where you can get 3D printed miniatures, like 3D printed resin miniatures from tons and tons and tons of different companies. So there's a lot of platforms out there where these 3D sculptors will sell their minis for you to print, right? So like My Mini Factory is a huge one where tons of sculptors will put up their stuff and you can buy them piecemeal and print them at home, or you can, a lot of times they'll have like Patreons where you can join, and then like every month they're sending you STLs. So if you're a miniature printer, that's great. There's so many options. It's just such cool stuff. I am not a miniature printer. I'm an FDM printer. I print all my terrain and I print handy boxes and dice trays. But as far as the resin things go, that I'm not living that resin life because one, I don't have a garage or like an outside or a basement or an outside place where like that stuff would vent. Stinky. And I can't stand the smell of resin. That sweet, sickening smell that resin makes me want to die. Printing miniatures is really cool. So like if I had a big ventilated space for it, it might be something I would do. But honestly, like it's a bunch of goop and it's a bunch of isopropyl alcohol and gloves and UV curing stations. It's a lot of work to make a miniature. Onlygames.com is a place just like that, except you can get the physical ones. They'll mail it to you. So they do the printing for you and you can get all the stuff. And they have, again, just a huge array of different sculptors and companies and stuff that are partnering with them so that you can, that they're licensed to print and sell all this stuff too. The other cool thing is they have sales like every month or whatever. There'll be a little 72-hour sale of one of these things. So it's like, hey, and like big, like 33% off type sales of like, hey, here we're spotlighting this creator, 33% off on all their stuff they make. And you scroll through just these beautiful sculpts that nobody else is making stuff like this, right? This isn't like Games Workshop makes beautiful stuff, but it all has the same kind of style and aesthetic, right? Yeah, or like Reaper minis all have kind of the same, they're supposed to fit together. They're from the same company. This stuff is buck wild, just off just stuff you never even dream of, from all kinds of genres, all kinds of stuff. And what a time suck, because there's so much stuff to just look through and spark my oh my god, that would be so cool to paint. Oh my god, that would be so hard to paint. Oh my gosh, I could put together a little force for this game with those guys, and that monster would be perfect for this. And just time and time and time and time. If you're like me and you love little plastic duders, onlygames.com is the place to go.
Only-games.com. It's like OnlyFans, but for nerds.
I mean, yeah.
That sounds great, though. That sounds right up your alley.
So the nerdiest thing I did was I discovered that website and I ordered way too many miniatures.
Oh no!
From the 30% off sale.
The pile of shame continues.
Oh my God. Well, I had to test it because I don't know what the
Oh, well,
quality of these things are
course.
like or if
Yes.
it's going to be
Oh, yes.
good.
Yeah.
So, it can't be a what I
Yeah.
like about it unless I actually like it. So I'm going to have to
Yeah.
get these
Yeah.
minis. And of course,
Yeah. Of
you not,
course.
what am
Yes.
I going to pay for shipping like some kind of sucker? No, I got to order
You got to
enough that
buy
the
enough
shipping
to
is
have
going to
free
be
shipping.
free
Yeah.
and
100%.
get those over here. I'll stop what I'm doing when they come and I'll paint them up and have some fun and then I'll let you know.
Yeah.
It's for research. It's for
It's
science. It's
only
for the
games.
show.
Only games.
I'm a fan of onlygames.com.
Amazing. I can't wait to see and share with our listeners your only games.
You think they're all going to be nudie miniatures, don't you? You think that they're
I am
nudie
actually
miniatures.
not thinking that at all, but now that you say so, that's probably what it is. I wasn't thinking that at all. No, I was thinking of like 100 like little goblin
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm not denying it either.
troll minis and dragons and dudes with swords and pirates and
Nudie only games day. Nudie only games day. They're coming.
oh goodness. Oh,
Annalise, save us from my embarrassment. What's the nerdiest thing you did this week?
I took advantage this week of the one sunny weekend we had between tremendous rainstorms, and I primed, I don't know, about 100 minis.
Yeah.
So I primed the entire core box of Marvel Zombies, which by itself was like 70 something minis, 80 something minis. And then I primed Horrified American Monsters, which only has like 6. And then I primed some of the Return to Dark Tower Convenant expansion because those have been sitting since I got them. And it's been rainy and overcast when I've had time off work. So
it has been a cold, rainy winter this year.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for it. We're not in a drought here in Northern California, but now I need to slap chop all 100 of those minis so that I can paint them. So the rain can continue now because now I'll spend my weekend slap chopping. I spent my time with the sun. We opened up all the windows and let some air through because the weather was really nice and did some outside stuff and cleaned up the porch and opened the garage and moved stuff around and we just took advantage of the sunny weather in a whole bunch of ways. And I cleaned and reorganized the nerd room. It needed it really bad. Stuff just piles in here really easily and it gets out of control because I also edit and record in here and I do work for work. It's also like my office and then I'll set out laundry to fold here and then
laundry in the game room. Oof.
I'm using part of the closet as hanging my fancy work clothes, so I might dress in here. So
oh wow,
it gets a little wonky. Last weekend when it was so sunny, I cleaned and reorganized the nerd room while I was also cleaning, reorganizing other parts of the house while I was also priming about 100 minis.
Well, good for you for having enough primer for that adventure because so many times I'm like, oh, it's finally sunny, and I open up the cupboard and I grab the can of primer and I'm like, that is a half a can of primer, and there is not a backup.
Hey man, and those Marvel Zombie ones took a lot of primer. I had about half a can and then a whole full can. And they're both white.
100 minis, sure.
Well, but more than that, there were just weird angles. I had to keep very rarely do I have to hit every angle of a mini, but I had to turn it upside down and do it this way and do it that way and standing up and then this side and then that side. So, and then 15 minutes of dry time in between each. It took an entire Saturday and an entire Sunday to fully cover them in black.
15's quick too. You must have had good UVs.
Oh, we get the sun directly in our front. So I put my big thing on the driveway, moved the car out and put it on the driveway, and it's just baking in the sun. Real good. It was perfect weekend. Beautiful
weather. Well, Marvel Zombies on your way.
The first of 3 boxes.
Next question. Have you read Marvel Zombies yet?
No.
Okay. Well, maybe it'll inspire you to do so.
I will add it to my list.
Right on. Speaking of nerd rooms, we'll have this conversation because it sounds like you're living in an apartment that exists inside your larger house. But speaking of nerd rooms, in our next episode, we'll address the movement from man caves, home bars, and she sheds to the all in the family good old nerd room. It's an episode that would make HGTV proud. Nerd next time.
Nothing's gonna build your equity on your house than a nerd room.
Maybe. We'll talk about that. If you want to keep up to date on Nerd Best Friends, hit that subscribe or follow button on your device. We appreciate our fans, especially the ones that share our podcast with others and give us 5-star ratings wherever they get their podcasts. We are at Nerd Best Friends on social medias, and you can send us a message through podcast@nerdbestfriends.com. These are the best and easiest ways to grow our nerd family.
We're going to have to roll out some Halo or something at some point, just for good old time's sakes.
I want to watch the Halo show.
Oh,
It's on like season 2 or season 3. There's a Halo show,
that's
but it's
right.
on Paramount Plus, and that is not
Oh.
one that I subscribe to.
Me either.
I wish that something could happen. No, I take that back. This is a monkey's paw situation. Erase, 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 erase. I wish magically and positively for everyone involved, I just had a huge chunk of time where I could subscribe to Paramount Plus for like a month and watch all the Star Trek stuff and all the Halo stuff and like everything that's on there and then unsubscribe. But I don't want a serious injury. I don't want a pandemic.
Yeah,
I don't want any of this stuff.
Touche.
I just
Touche.
want this magical bubble of time where I could just go through all of that, get it over with, and not fool myself like I do so often with like, oh yeah, there's stuff I want to watch on there. I'll subscribe to it. And then it's like $20 a month for the rest of my life and I never watch that stuff.
That's what happened with me and Ted Lasso, but I didn't pay because I had a whole year free when I got the new Apple TV and I never watched it. And then I got like a new phone and it's like 3 months free. And I'm like, I better watch Ted Lasso this time so I don't have to pay for Apple Plus. Yeah, they keep
giving you free stuff with your Apple products. So if you're going to buy that stuff anyway and you stage out your purchasing, it's like, okay, well, it's time for me to get a new phone. And then 3 months later, oh, it's time for me to upgrade my watch. And then 3 years later,
I need new AirPods.
Yeah. And you just keep rolling out. You're going to have Apple TV forever. But
hey,
Paramount doesn't do anything like that.
You switch districts and you stay with Mac. I got a new MacBook and my Apple ID thinks I bought a new Mac.
Oh, that's a good point. Oh my gosh. This could, if I just keep logging into new iPads for, this is probably not for the podcast. It's against the rules. I would never. And I'm going to recommend it to all my friends. Yeah, Paramount Plus doesn't give you anything. What do I get with Paramount Plus? I don't get anything. Nothing. What am I going to buy? I don't even know what Paramount Plus has. It's a mountain. If I climb a mountain, do I get 3 months of Paramount Plus?
You're obviously not missing it because you're not watching it and you don't none the wiser.
Well, I don't know what Master Chief is up to with all his friends down there on the Halo.
These shows eventually will end up on YouTube or Netflix or something. You'll be able to watch it at some point.
You're absolutely right. You're
just like Cobra Kai.
Right. If I really wanted to and I hear the good buzz, I could just go get it on Apple, whatever, movies, TV, iTunes.
Find it somewhere.
iTunes.
Thanks for reminiscing about video games. And
is that what we talked about?
Well, that and OnlyFans, but that's what you do in your own time.
We barely talked about OnlyFans. Like, I would say the OnlyFans conversation was very minimal.
I mean, we still talked about it. Until next time, nerds.
Thanks for listening. The best description I ever heard was OnlyFans. It's like Patreon, except you can spread your butt cheeks.
Oh boy.
Oh, that was on the recording.